intro. I guess I'll do that. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Not Just Politics podcast. Today we have a special guest. I am currently in... Can I do Ohio slander, or are you going to get mad at me if I slander Ohio on this show? I can't. I won't slander Ohio. We're in the state of Ohio. It's a state in the union. It's one of them. One of the states in the union. My cousin is here in the studio. This is Nicole Kowalski. You are a city at large councilwoman in the city of Hudson. We're in Hudson, Hudson, Ohio, in a beautiful library, a great library with a studio. And so thank you to them. What is the name of this library again? I want to give them a shout out.
Yeah, the Hudson Hudson Library and Historical Society. So it's really great. There's so many amenities here.
Yeah, it's a beautiful place, and they have a studio. So shout out to them for that. And how have you been? This is the first adult conversation I think we've ever had.
I know. Yeah, it is. It's funny when you, in our family, like growing up. I must confess, I still think of you as like a little boy, like this.
That's
tall.
okay. You're allowed to.
I think earlier when I first saw you, I was like, oh my gosh, you're so tall. It's not that I haven't seen you this height in recent years, but it's always just startling. And that's what people say about me and my siblings too. So. Yeah.
Well, so you are, you're one of the older cousins in the family. There are 11 siblings, just to give a little bit of family lore, I guess. My dad's one of 11 siblings. Wait, can I do a count quick?
Do you know?
I guess, yes, I do. So, okay, so your mom is the sixth of 11.
Yep.
Okay, I had to get all that straight. Yeah, I still have to go over it in my head and like make sure I have all the order correct for all 11 siblings. But yeah, and so. We had kind of limited interactions throughout. We saw you guys a lot more earlier on, I think. And then as everyone got older, it was kind of less and less.
Well, so I don't know if you remember this because I think you were pretty young, but we did live in the Pittsburgh area.
You did.
In New Kensington. So
I crashed through the door of your house. I fell through a door, I think, or Vondon did. One of us fell through like a door.
Yeah. So we were basically walking distance from your parents.
Yeah.
For a couple years, but then we moved to Ohio. So we weren't in New Ken for very long.
Yeah.
But it was nice to be so close. But I think that's probably like when we interacted the most. But, the thing that I've loved is, our family hasn't been as great about it in recent years, but for a long time there, I felt like we would always congregate at the Aunt Alicia and Uncle David's home. And
for like Thanksgiving and
for
Easter,
all the holidays,
everything.
So that was really nice, but we haven't had as many interactions, I think, in recent years once the kids have all grown up.
Yeah, it just gets tougher to get everybody in one spot, which is great now. We're here for your daughter's birthday party.
Yes.
And this is a joint birthday party, correct?
Yes,
this is
for both girls.
And so there's going to be a lot of people here. My parents are coming up tomorrow, and my brother's going to be there, so that'll be great to see everybody again. I haven't seen all of you guys together that's been a very long time.
Probably my wedding, because you were at my wedding.
Yes,
right?
that honestly that might be the last time.
That might be, yeah.
Yeah, that's
so
crazy to think about. Yeah, and if this does get like too personal, we can cut this out. But I'm just curious, like, just like jump into it. Like, what kind of memories of Grandma and Grandpa do you have? Like, I'm just curious about this because like I feel like the older cousins obviously knew them for a lot longer. I grew up in Pittsburgh. I saw Grandma and Grandpa a lot, but at the same time, I never felt like I really knew them.
So I actually feel really lucky. Growing up, Grandpa knew that I was very artistic. And so I think that I, being one of the older siblings, got a really great opportunity when I was really young, and they were younger grandparents, to get to know them in a way that a lot of the other cousins didn't. Yeah. So I have some really fun memories of going to their house and looking through their gardens. He always had chives, so I would always be pulling chives out of the ground and just walking around with onion breath, just chewing on chives.
You're eating them out of the
Yes, just straight up eating them out of the garden. Didn't wash them, nothing.
Was the blueberry bush?
The blueberry bushes, yeah.
Every summer we went there to pick blueberries.
Yeah, so I remember taking like a little bowl out and picking blueberries. And so I kind of went on a tangent there about eating chives. But so Grandpa knew I was very artistic, and he had that button maker. So I loved going over to his house, and he'd give me, the little paper, and he'd draw a circle on it, and then I would draw on it, and he would make buttons with me. So
I forgot about that button maker.
Yeah.
Wow.
Honestly, I kind of wish I knew what happened to it when they passed, because I would have loved to have had it. But
yeah, they're unfortunately not with us anymore, but and that was just kind of the one thing that I've always wanted to interview all of the siblings. Because
that would be really cool.
I think it'd be very cool, difficult, but cool, because I was with one of our cousins that has a landscaping company. I was working for him for a few summers, and we just kind of sat down, and I just thought, like, man, there's going to be so much family history that we're never going to get back unless we do some way to record it. So I'm still kind of considering doing that, like trying to interview as many of them as I can and sort of put that together, even if no one else, even if it's just for this family to have, like, just
that
to
would
still
be really
have
cool.
those memories, because like I said, I didn't feel like I definitely didn't get to know Grandma and Grandpa as well as the older cousins did, which obviously that makes sense, right? But it was just strange because I was in Pittsburgh more than any other cousins. Like, my brother and they're the most.
Yeah, I have some other really fun memories of them. Like, I remember one time they brought Stephanie, Michael, and Matthew to visit. This was when we lived in the Columbus area in a town called Pickerington. And I remember them. I think they brought Allison and Ryan to visit us one time too. I don't remember where we were living at the time. I think that was maybe Pickerington as well. But I felt like it was always nice that we got to get to know all of our cousins.
Yeah.
I think the cousins that I don't know as well are the ones who live farther away. I tend to know the ones who live at least in proximity to, the Midwest. But like people in Florida, I found it always hard to become really close with them. But Stephanie, for example, who lived in Florida, Stephanie Malik, not your mom.
There's another Stephanie.
Like as adults, I feel like grown a lot closer. And so that's been really nice.
I haven't spoken to any of the Maliks in a long time.
Yeah.
It's been a while. But it's a big family. There's a lot of cousins.
A lot.
And so those family gatherings were like massive at one point. There was a lot of people over there. I do remember there was we were at Uncle Dave's for Thanksgiving at some point, and we were playing a giant game of spoons in the garage, all of us. And I don't know if you were there. I don't know if you were playing with us, but it was like there was probably like 12 of us around that table, and it was the most violent card game I've ever. There were people hitting each other with forks or spoons and whatever. And that was just it was a good time. It would be great if we could somehow find a way to do that again. But without getting into the weeds, there's families are complicated.
Yeah, families are complicated. I don't think that's going to come as a surprise to any listener.
No, especially with 11 siblings. That's
Yeah, and who knows, maybe that will never happen, but maybe someday it will.
Yeah.
It's certainly something for us to work towards as like the younger generation, the children. Yeah. I mean, if anyone can make it happen and bring about a sense of unity, I think that it could be us for sure.
Yeah, I've thought about that for a while. Like, it would take a while, but you could rebuild that.
Yeah, I think do it. I just don't want it to be where the only time we see people is for funerals and birthday or weddings, Right. So it's nice. That's why I'm excited that you guys came out for the birthday.
Yeah, I'm very excited to be here. I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to make it up at first, but then I was able to make it get up here. Yeah. And Vonden's like doing 1,000 things. Somehow he found a way to be available tomorrow to come over and see everybody. So you are, like I said, you're an at-large councilwoman for the city of Hudson, Ohio. What kind of got you into that? And, what are sort of your inspirations for running for office?
So that's actually why I wanted to do this podcast with you, was because a lot of my inspiration for running is our family. So, without really getting too much into the weeds about our family, our grandparents we were just talking about, they were activists. And I think that to some degree that is like in my blood now. And so I now have vastly different views than Grandma and Grandpa did. But I'm also proud of the fact that they worked so hard for what, the things they believed in, even if I don't agree with those views. So I kind of like to say, like you inherit things from your parents' genetics. Like I really believe deep down somehow this is like in our genetics. Like look at you doing this podcast and working so hard at making it easier for people of all different walks of life to talk about difficult topics. I think that activism is truly something that we inherited. So, like the first campaign I ever volunteered for was Uncle David's campaign for mayor of Verona.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I was little. I don't know how old I was when he first ran, but I remember being at their house, and he had me putting stamps on postcards, and oh boy, did I take that seriously.
Oh, yeah.
I was like very careful to put it exactly in the corner.
Yeah.
And so that was the first campaign I ever volunteered for. Obviously, I've volunteered for many others. There's pretty much no way this is not going to come out on this podcast, but I'm a Democrat. Surprise!
Right, yeah.
And so back in the day, though, we were raised in a family, at least I don't know about yours, but I would imagine just knowing what I know about our families, it might have been a little similar. So, I was raised, my family's Catholic. I was raised conservative, so I was a Republican for most of my life. And I think that looking back on our childhood, it was really interesting, but in my opinion, children were always expected to take part in some of these, what I think other families might consider really adult conversations about political topics. And I think that was really formative for me. And it really showed me the importance of having an opinion, but having an educated opinion. And so, then when I was a little older in high school, I was still a Republican. I think it was 2008. I actually volunteered for John McCain's campaign for president. It was only maybe a year or so later that I started to realize,
And what flipped that switch? Like what started to make if you don't mind going into that, you don't have to if you don't want to, but because it was the same thing for me. Like I think I was raised Catholic. My parents were a lot more conservative when I was younger, and in particular, my dad, I think, has moved away from that. Not entirely, but definitely moved a lot, maybe more towards the center. I think my mom has as well. So I kind of saw that over the years happen, and I had a little bit of that myself. But if you don't want to, obviously go into that. But I'd be curious to hear, like, was it just you paying attention more, or just growing up, or what was it?
It was meeting people.
That's what does it. That's what did it for me.
It was people. And over time, I think that it's wonderful that I had a strong religious foundation because I am a faithful person. Another little tidbit is I actually left the Catholic religion. And so I do still go to church. We're members of a wonderful church here in Hudson. But I started to realize that as an adult, I was having to, and this is in reference to Catholicism, but that really shaped my views on politics as well. So for me, at least, they go hand in hand. I don't know if it's that way for everyone. I know it is for quite a lot of people, like it was for my parents. But when I realized that I was having to unlearn so many things that the Catholic Church taught me, I made the decision that I didn't want my girls to have to do that, and that, it was something that I didn't identify with anymore. So I spoke with my husband about it, and, once I'd kind of made the decision that I didn't, I didn't really believe some of the teachings of the Catholic Church and agree with a lot of things, we discussed it and we made that decision together. And so our younger daughter, Sylvia, was not baptized in a Catholic church, but she is baptized. So, so that, for me, when I went to college, I started to meet all these people, and people who were different than me, people from different countries, people with different beliefs. It was really eye-opening. But then also a really big topic that, I've had to grapple with for many years. And, you might have some similar thoughts on it too. But for me, at least, growing up, a lot of political conversations were about abortion. And when I went to college and I started to do research and I realized it wasn't a black and white issue, there was a lot of gray area. It was a lot of things that just like all seemed to happen in college, but abortion was a big one, just because that was always such a prevalent conversation growing up. And so, I think it was a combination of college, meeting new people, realizing that some of the things that the Republican Party basically represented, I just had vastly different views on. And so then and it actually was like an identity crisis for me.
Yeah, it certainly can be.
It was very much like I struggled with realizing that I was not a Republican, and I'd been raised to be one.
Yeah, if you're raised Christian conservative your whole life, then you realize all of a sudden you're not that anymore. It's like the whole foundation of your life has been unraveled. Yeah.
And then I can't remember what year it would have been. I was in college, so I'm gonna guess maybe like 2010 or so.
Gosh, I was in fourth grade.
Fourth grade.
Something like that.
So I was in college at Kent State, and Obama came to Kent and spoke. And that was right around the time that I was starting to realize I was maybe not a Republican. And he spoke, and it was very moving. And I heard what he had to say, but I also felt it. And I felt that message. And it was just I'll never forget sitting in that auditorium. I was so far away. He looked like this big,
like a little speck on the stage. Yeah.
But it was just really wonderful. And so I think it was a combination of things that made me move to the left rather. So.
Yeah, I don't think I ever, because I think by the time I had sort of walked away from the church, I wasn't politically conscious yet. So I don't think I ever really had that direct connection of like Christian conservative. That was never really a part of my identity. My parents never really talked. Those abortion conversations at Grandma and Grandpa's house, I heard them a lot. But and actually it's funny that the clinic that they protested is right next to my apartment.
Oh, really?
Like right now. Yeah, I walk past it every day going to work. And I didn't realize that that's what it was until I thought, oh, is this the one where they were? They're like right here. And so that was just an interesting thing like to think about. And yes, I never really had that like direct, those two things were never quite connected. So I sort of just walked away from the church, and then I got paddleballed around in the world of politics for like 3 years until I figured out exactly where I wanted to be. Yeah.
And where do you consider yourself now? Are you like
center right, I would say. Like, but I say that, but even then it's not like that doesn't fully capture it.
Yeah.
Because there's plenty of stuff that the right does that I'm not a fan of. There's lots of the left that I'm not a fan of. So I'm just kind of stuck in I'm not quite somewhere in the center.
So much.
Somewhere in the center.
Because as I've run for office twice now. And even though people know that I'm a Democrat, I have a lot of Republican supporters. And I think a big reason for that is because I grew up Republican. I really can talk to anyone about anything. Yeah. And I also really understand where they're coming from because I once believed those same things too. Yeah. And but what I hear from so many Republicans is that they feel almost like, orphaned, like they don't have a place in the modern Republican Party. Yeah. And that's what some of them struggle with. And, to me, politics just feels so different. I always think of that video of John McCain for the record, even though I am a Democrat, I love John McCain. I think that he, is an American hero. But that video of him when a woman was, I think, making remarks about Obama.
Yeah, I do remember that. That's a great clip.
And he stopped and said, and he corrected her and he said, he's a great man.
That I have disagreements with, kind of thing.
That I have disagreements with. And that was, to me, such a moving moment in politics to see that.
Yeah.
And I don't know what's happened, but we haven't really had any moments like that since.
No, very few. It's become a circus act over there. At least it seems like to me. That's what it seems like. Yeah, I do remember seeing that clip. That was a good clip. It seems like there used to be at least the idea that we would pretend to be okay with each other in public places. We would at least show good faith and goodwill. Well, even if behind closed doors, I can't stand that guy. It's like we used to at least pretend that like things were civil, and at least if we pretended, that was at least better than not having it at all, it seems. But I don't want to get into the weeds on that. But yeah, so that's what was that running for office? That's an interesting thing that not many people have an inside perspective on. Yeah,
so to kind of go backwards in time, it really started for me in 2016. I was really devastated by the results of the presidential election. And in 2016, I realized that all the volunteering that I did, whether you love or hate her, I was really excited at the prospect of having a woman president. And so I was devastated that Hillary didn't win. And no candidate for president is perfect. I can recognize that. Yeah. But I really believed she was going to win. And so
I think a lot of people believed that she was going to win.
I did. And the whole next day, it sounds silly, but I felt this like sense of grief because I had just wanted to see a female president in my lifetime. And not just any female president, but there was a lot about her that I really did like. And, we don't need to get into that. But I realized in that moment that I couldn't just stand by and casually volunteer for Hillary's campaign. I think, what did I do for her campaign? Maybe I made calls. I don't think I canvassed for her, but I did some volunteering for her, but I was like casually volunteering.
Yeah.
And I realized that if everybody in America who was feeling the way I felt had just done a little bit more, the outcome might have been different.
Sure.
And I realized I couldn't be a keyboard warrior anymore. You don't change hearts or minds.
Nope.
By arguing with people on the internet.
No.
The way that you make change is you run for office or you volunteer in your community or you volunteer for a candidate.
Yeah.
And there's a ton of other ways that you can make a difference. Those are just the ones I was interested in particular. And so in 2016, I said, I'm going to run for office. I don't know when. I don't know what office. I don't even know what qualifies me to do this.
Yeah.
But I'm going to do it.
Gonna do it.
And so then I realized it was super complex. And it's also something where, you need to get to know your community. You need to, if you want to run for office, there's a lot of different offices, right? There's city offices, there's county offices, there's state offices. There's, it's not just like running for Congress or for United States Senate or something. Yeah. You can run for a lot of different offices. So I started to do research because I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And I thought for a minute, maybe not even that. Maybe I want to volunteer for like my city's boards or commissions. A lot of municipalities have like a planning commission or a board of zoning and building appeals or other commissions or even maybe just like a nonprofit. I was like, maybe I just want to volunteer for a nonprofit.
Yeah. I
always kept coming back to running for office though. So then in 2020, it felt right. A vacancy on Hudson City Council came up. It was an unexpired term. So basically a councilman resigned and he had 1 year left of his term. There's 7 members of Hudson Council. So without the one, it was a split 3-3 vote. They couldn't choose.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So they sent it to a vote. And they said this will be on the November ballot. the next council member is going to be chosen by the people. So then 3 people filed to run. I was one of those 3 people, and then I won in 2020, which meant I had to run again in 2021. So I ran again in 2021.
Gotcha.
So that's kind of that story there in a very, high
love
level.
that. Yeah. Also,
I can get really into the weeds about running, which I would love to do because I want to encourage young people to run. But
real quick, I just want to make sure the camera's still recording because I'm just a little bit spooked. I just have camera anxiety. I just want to flip it so we can.
Oh, perfect.
Now we can just make sure that everything's.
There I am.
Okay, cool. Sorry, I just wanted to make sure we were still rolling on the camera and everything. Oh, yeah, and so what is like something? I feel like I feel like there are a lot of keyboard warriors. I mean, there are a lot of keyboard warriors out there that I feel like everyone thinks they're like an expert in like this is how politics works. Like, what is the actual workings of like local politics, like stuff that people wouldn't think about, like just the sort of day to day of what you're doing as a councilwoman?
That's a great question. So day to day, a lot of what I do is really just connecting people to the resources they need within the city, and working with Hudson City staff to fix issues, or sometimes somebody might have an idea, I might have an idea, and for different programming, things to benefit the citizens. So a lot of what I do is like I'll answer an email if somebody has a recurring issue with, whatever it is, their sidewalk or a culvert or something. And then if it's a city issue, I'll talk to staff. Staff will send somebody out to look at it, get the issue fixed. A lot of correspondence happens whenever we have severe weather events. Power outages, because we have municipal-owned power here in Hudson.
Okay.
Water and power, and actually broadband. We have fiber internet. So municipal-owned water, fiber, and electricity. And so a lot of the day-to-day is just correspondence with people. Being at large, though, it's funny. I think people think that because I represent the whole city that I must get more emails than the at-large council members, which is actually the opposite. People always go to the board council members because they must think we're too busy. So the ward council members get far more emails.
Oh, really?
And
nice
then,
diversion. So your inbox isn't as full.
Yeah. And then every month we have 2 meetings and 2 workshops. And those are recorded and available online if you ever get bored and want to watch.
Okay.
And so we, in our meetings, a lot of what we do, I would say, is making appropriations, so allocating money for different projects. And that is a huge part of this. So it's making decisions on things that affect people day to day that I think they don't really think about, like which neighborhoods get sidewalks, or looking at the ratings of roads to decide which roads need to be repaved. Staff will give us reports on that, and then we'll vote to appropriate money for different projects. So a lot of it is like city infrastructure or related to city ordinances, which are laws. And so, like, for example, in my tenure on council, we, as a council, authored legislation to regulate short-term rentals like Airbnbs, because that had been a problem in Hudson. So, things that people maybe wouldn't think about, but a lot of it has to do with just taking care of the day-to-day workings of a city.
Yeah, it is interesting to think about whenever and this sounds so like silly to say, but when you live in a society like this, in which there is so much kind of like collaboration going on, you don't think about like all of those little things that go into your everyday life. You don't think about those things on the day-to-day, and like there's people running all of those things the whole time. You might not even ever see them, but they're there and they're doing stuff.
Yeah. So that's kind of like what my role is. I really enjoy it. There's the fun parts of it too, going to ribbon cuttings, I think, things like that, where you support businesses and they see people coming out. I have a social media presence. I have a love-hate relationship with that.
So do I. Yeah.
And So yeah, it's been a good experience. I love government. I love serving my community. I love helping people. My favorite interactions are when students write in.
That's great.
And I always try to reply to them, whether it's with an email or sometimes a handwritten note, just because I always think about when I was a kid. That would have been really cool.
That would have been cool. Yeah.
So yeah, those are some of my favorite interactions, and it's just really, it's a very fulfilling job, even when it's difficult. And I think the thing I like the least about it is the politics.
Right, that's the least favorite part. And this is another thing I'm curious about. Does your perspective on federal politics change after working in local politics? Like, does it like more frustration, less frustration? Is it like more of an understanding of how it works? Like, what is that like?
Yeah, being on council has made me realize how slow government is.
Yeah.
And, people will come to us and they'll say, I need a stop sign on my street. And I'm like, I would love to give you a stop sign on your street, but we have to order studies. We can't just put a stop sign wherever we want. There has to be a reason to put a stop sign up. And then, things have to go through 3 readings. There has to be public notice. When you realize how long it takes to do something simple, you start to better understand people's frustration with politics and with government.
Yeah.
I wouldn't necessarily use those words interchangeably, politics and government. Sometimes it is accurate. And so I think being on council has, when I look at national politics, the federal government, I start to understand why things take so long.
Right. Yeah.
And I also understand a little bit of the controversy, how people maybe are negotiating to get something that they know they need for their community in that bill. And so it's given me an appreciation of really working together. And that's where I think, my upbringing as a Republican is beneficial. But I would have to say that Hudson politics, it can be pretty polarizing. I think it started to trickle down from national politics.
That was my next question is like,
yes.
Do you think it's, so have you seen, because this is also interesting. Okay, I have 2 questions. So is that a thing, like you've kind of seen it get, is it still kind of getting worse?
I think so. When I was first elected, I think that there were a couple of people on Hudson Council at the time who I consider to be mentors, and they were both Republican. And I still keep in touch with both of them to this day, and I learned so much from them. We had the best conversations, and it's funny, in local politics, like what I'm doing, there's no Democrat or Republican, right? Like we are appropriating money for roads and sidewalks, and roads and sidewalks aren't red or blue.
Nope.
And
they're trying to. I saw a thing yesterday. They were like, they're trying to. That's not real. But they're going to. I feel like that's next. I feel like next they're going to be like, well, this is a red road.
I have no idea.
Road. I have no idea. It's so messed up.
But what I've seen since both of them have left council is I feel like it's certain members on Hudson Council are trying to move it in a much more partisan direction. And I really miss that camaraderie that I had with those 2 Republican members of council. And I think a big reason is you would have never, back a handful of years ago, you probably would have never known that they were Republicans or that I was a Democrat.
Yeah.
And it's not that I don't want people to know I am. I openly identify as one. I endorse other Democrats. But I didn't think it was going to be so important in a local office where, in my mind, some of these issues seemed very cut and dry to me, and I would have thought that we would have been able to find common ground on them. Yeah. And then now I'm starting to see some, really basic, like, for example, infrastructure projects. Or whatever it might be, I'm starting to see things become a lot more polarized, which has been tough because I don't think that's for the benefit of the residents.
Or for you or for anybody, really.
Yeah. But, I always think back, and so I know it's possible to have great relationships with colleagues who, are on the other side. because I've had that before, but right now it's been something where I think that national politics has really influenced the way that some people approach their role in government.
Yeah. And this is a little bit of like circling back, but this was another question I wanted to ask you, because you did volunteer for Hillary Clinton's campaign.
Yeah.
So I was in 8th grade in 2016. I heard that Trump got elected, and it just didn't mean anything to me because I was 14. It had no meaning. I was like, I remember going over to my mom's parents' house, and they would always be watching golf, and sometimes he would be so I just knew that he was just kind of this guy. I knew nothing about him. It meant like nothing to me.
Yeah.
And then like 2 years later, I started to become politically conscious, and so it's kind of weird to say it, but that's all I've ever known. That type of politics is the only one I've ever seen. And I'm just curious, like, what is it like to watch that? What is it like to watch it happen while you're politically conscious? Because it seems like you were, to some extent, like paying attention more than I was back then. And again, not to like get into like the too in the weeds of like the politics of it or anything if you don't want to do that.
No,
but it's
I
like
don't mind.
Just that, like, I'm always interested in that because it really is all I've ever known. Like I hate to say it, but like all the stuff that happened in 2020, as messed up as like a lot of it was, it felt oddly in place for me personally. That's what I felt. I was like, this is messed up.
You've never known anything different.
Never known anything different. No.
So I guess the thing that I would say, and the reason I brought up that moment between John McCain and Barack Obama, when John McCain came to Barack Obama's defense and defended his character and who he was as a person, is because I feel like the younger generation, they don't know any different. Like, what do you know? You know, global pandemic, Trump presidency.
I know Trump presidency, a bunch of Middle East conflicts, but that's always been happening. But like, there's a modern iteration of that. We're not going into that, but it's like, I've known that stuff. I've known the pandemic. There was all of this stuff in the summer, and then there was January 6th, and then it's like, and then we just kept rolling, and it's like the fever dream never quite stopped. And I don't know what it was like before this, and I just watch videos, and I'm like, I see what it used to be like, and I think that's what got me started in some of the stuff I'm doing. Is like, can we just get back to that, please?
Exactly.
Can we please just?
Because you've never known any different.
I don't. Yeah. I'm not asking anyone to be a centrist. I'm not asking anyone to agree with each other on every single thing. I just want people to not act like children when they're at a podium.
I hear
you. It's my only request.
I hear you. So I remember in like 2016 when, Hillary lost, and that was like the year that I think a lot of things changed, and I'm gonna blame social media for it. I'm gonna blame social media.
I'm not gonna go into it again because the people listening to the show know I've become the biggest social media hater over the last year. I mean,
like I said,
I want to get rid of it. So I know some of it's.
I am fine. 1 second away from getting rid of X.
Oh, you're on X. That's
permanently.
Crazy. I've never gone
being on Threads. I'm on Threads as well. I have my like a Councilwoman account on X, but I don't have a Councilwoman Nicole Kowalski account on Threads yet, but I have like a Facebook page where I communicate with residents and stuff. But I'm going to blame a lot of the polarization in America right now on social media.
For sure.
Because I think that, people have always gravitated towards viewpoints that they inherently agree with. And that's why I like to challenge myself. I'll turn on Fox News. I'll be like, what's Sean Hannity saying today?
What are they up to over there?
What are they up to over there? And so I don't like to watch just one station. I'm not going to exclusively watch any one station. I really like NPR, though, and I do tend to gravitate towards more things like that. But, I want to be exposed to all of these different viewpoints and all of these different thoughts. And sometimes it's interesting to flip between and hear the difference in the coverage between like a Fox News and an MSNBC or something.
Sure.
And so for me, like, I remember when in 2008, I remember, volunteering for, like I said, for John McCain's campaign. Isn't it funny? First John McCain, then Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, it's a fun mix.
I will say I'm disappointed in myself for never volunteering for Barack Obama's campaign for his second run, but I was in college then, and I did go through a very short period of time where I was like too much politics. And I like wanted to get away from it because I'd had so much as a child, but you can never really get away from it. So I came back, and I'm back doing the politics thing, but wish I had volunteered for Barack Obama's campaign because I think that would have been an amazing campaign to volunteer for. So, but I remember how different it was each time Obama ran, and like the men on the Republican ticket, and I just feel like we've lost that, and you see people who I would consider more like moderates when they speak out and speak out for what they believe is right, and maybe they speak out against Trump or against somebody's actions or whatever. I think that what I'm seeing is that a lot of this behavior that I don't think was once socially acceptable is now become a lot more acceptable.
That's the weird part. It's like, my thing is like, how are so many people just like okay with this?
I wonder to myself, like in 2008, would this person have been able to say that without
probably not
having had more severe consequences?
Yeah.
And I'm not, naming names, Marjorie Taylor Greene.
But now it seems like you can say anything you want up there.
Yeah, exactly. And
MTG, we call her. I call her MTG.
Yeah.
She gets AOC and MTG. It's like a fun thing they have going on.
Yeah. So, that's the thing that I always wonder is like back when there was more, I don't know, manners in politics.
Quite literally, just more manners.
Would people have even, it's not even a matter of like, could they have gotten away with saying it then? Like, would they even have? I don't believe so.
Right.
And I always think back on like the Obama presidency, and I'm like, what controversies did he have? Okay, he wore a tan suit one time,
Other than the Middle East stuff, that's like the biggest one that everyone brings up. But it's like, other than that,
I'm being a little facetious. But
they were getting angry at him for like eating a burger or something. They got mad at him for like eating a burger with a fork and a knife, I think.
Yeah, or something like that. Like, what was it? He only put mustard on his burgers or something.
Yeah,
I can't remember. I know what you're talking about, though. Yeah, the burger controversy. So
I
miss those days, though. Is my point. I miss those days.
It's fun, right? It was good because they showed the clip of Obama eating the burger in like I think it was either like only mustard, like a fork and a knife, and then it's like they immediately played a clip of like Trump eating pizza with a fork and a knife, and it's like that's what I want to get back to. Can we just get back to kind of fun? It's like I feel like obviously politics is serious, like you have to take it seriously, of course, but it's like to a certain extent you almost have to bring a little bit of levity somewhere where you can fit it, because I feel like otherwise it becomes too heavy at some point.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of, can we get back to...
I know. And so to your question though about Hillary, I think part of the reason I was so distraught that she lost was not because she lost, but because of who won.
Sure.
And I just watched this campaign unfold. And, that Access Hollywood tape where he said, grab them.
Right, yeah.
Say it.
I mean, there's a laundry list of clips.
So, like, that moment, like, I will never forget listening to that clip on the news, and they played it over and over and over. And so I remember on election night when Hillary lost and Trump won, I realized, like, that was our future. And I thought to myself, this is going to be how this administration communicates with America. He has such a unique, for lack of better words, communication style. And, I just thought to myself, this is going to be how the next 4 years is. And then it was worse than I imagined.
And turns out it was more than the next 4 years. And turns out it was just this fever dream that the timeline split and we entered some strange new world at that point. Yeah, it was just weird. It's been, I've always said, like, this is one of this, and I'm sure that every generation says, well, growing up was crazy, because there's always been stuff going on. But but growing up now feels like it is uniquely different. It is. Social media is a completely different thing than any other generation had. It's completely different.
It allows, misinformation
And even then, just like
to spread like wildfire.
you just scroll and it's just bad thing after bad thing, just right into your system every day. And it's like, well, of course, if you do this even if you do it for a month, you're done. You're cooked. Like you have to detox. Like I have to detox from Instagram sometimes. I'll just delete it off my phone for 3 months and I just don't look at it at all. And then I'll go back.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of issues with social media. I think also people are finally starting to realize, people truly didn't realize this before, but they are starting to realize it now. Like the internet is forever.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And so when we go online and we're consuming media, I think it also makes us a lot more comfortable with putting so much more of our lives on social media. And I've even found myself being like, hold up. You know, you don't need to
share any of it. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that I'll never say on this show because there's just no point in just keep it to yourself. And this is a question. So do you know who Jonathan Haidt is?
The name sounds familiar.
He's a social psychologist. The new project he's working on, he's written a book that's just compiled all of the data about what social media has done to young people.
Oh, that sounds interesting.
And so he's starting a campaign. It's called the book is called The Anxious Generation. And so he has a campaign called Free the Anxious Generation, which is like he's calling for the removal of social media in schools, like get the phones away. And so they've actually started doing this. Like some schools have actually, I guess, like banned the phones like in the classroom stuff, and it's like kids are talking to each other again. They're like recess, they're like playing games and stuff again. It's like they're getting back to being kids. Like that's what they should be able to do.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, Ella is 4. That's my daughter.
I was going to say, are you going to let...
She knows how to use my phone. And, like, we have an iPad for her, and we really don't let her...
Is she going to be able to have social media? Are you going to let them?
You know, I don't know. I think that's a conversation for, like, when she wants it.
Oh, sure. And I mean, if you don't want to get too personal with that, obviously you don't have to. But
like, for me, as because I'm an elected official, and I have, like, my Councilwoman Nicole Kowalski Facebook page... there are times where we're, as a family, enjoying, like a wonderful community event. And I'm taking pictures of my kid. And I'll think to myself, oh, this would be so cute to show the community, like my daughter enjoying whatever it is, Hudson Bandstand concerts or Ice Cream Social or whatever it is. And then I always think twice about it. And that's for 2 reasons. The first reason is... I don't know if my children would want their picture on social media when they're older. So I try to do it sparingly because I feel like maybe sometimes it's fine and it's appropriate, but I also don't want to do anything in my capacity in government as a council member. I don't want them ever to feel like I'm using them for votes or something. Yeah. And I also don't... want to violate their privacy. Like if they grow up and they see all these pictures of themselves on my, Councilwoman page, they may not like it. And what if they grow up and they have different politics than me?
Sure. Yeah.
But also, I know that there's a lot of bad people on the internet, and I, in general, I try not to post pictures of my children where just like anyone can see them.
Right.
That's another thought. But then the other big thought, the 2 things that really hold me back is that I find that even in like local politics, I have people who really dislike me. And have said terrible things about me. And I don't really want to share the parts of my life that I love the most with everyone. Yeah. Because not everyone deserves it.
We were never built to do that to begin with. Like the human brain was never meant to interact with that many people anyway.
No.
It's not
and
a
it's
thing
fine.
you're supposed to do.
If you don't like me, that's fine. If you didn't vote for me, also fine. I will still help you with your utility bill. I will still help you when your power's out. I mean, but I just might not want to share pictures of my kids with you.
I can understand disliking a state elected official or a federal person, but to strongly dislike a local, I mean, I guess you could dislike anybody, right? But it's
once we end this podcast, I'm going to show you some stuff.
That is so crazy.
I've had people do, so like one time somebody photoshopped, how like you go onto one of those Halloween costume websites.
Stuff?
Just wait. Somebody It was like a flip-flop Halloween costume. And they said that I flip-flopped on something. So like a person took a picture from like a Halloween costume website and then photoshopped my face on like the model's face and then put it out on the internet. And it was like, Nicole's a flip-flopper, which I think is hilarious.
It's hysterical.
And like, I think they thought it would bother me. I saved it, and like to this day, I show people.
Did you repost it?
No,
that would have been the ultimate. I would have been like, check this out.
Yeah, I think I put it like on my Instagram story or something for my friends. I don't know. I think they thought it would bother me, but I secretly loved it. I was like, this is hilarious.
That's hilarious.
Can't believe somebody
took the time out of their
so
day.
much time to do this. I'm really living in someone's head rent free, you know.
Rent free.
There have been other things that are kind of funny like that, and I don't know, maybe people think that some of these things bother me. Little do they know I just like save it away. I think it's just because I'm an odd person. Like, I love politics so much. Like a dream of mine is to be roasted at the White House Correspondents' Dinner.
Really? Oh, my God. I mean, that'd be great.
Imagine achieving that level of success. That
are they doing one of those? Are we getting one this year?
Oh, didn't it pass?
Oh, maybe I didn't see anything from it. If it did,
I can't remember.
I don't know.
I've been so busy lately. I've kind of like.
But those are fun though. That is like, there's something important about that. Like being able to go. Like there are many places where you cannot do that. Where you cannot invite a bunch of comedians to come into the White House and trash the leader of the most powerful superpower of the world.
Yeah. So it I think I have a really thick skin. And
well, that's helpful.
A lot of times things, when people attack me on social media or whatever it is they say or do, a lot of times it bothers my husband more than it bothers me.
Sure.
If it bothers me for like maybe a day. There've really only been 2 things that have bothered me for more than a day. And I don't necessarily want to get into that, but for the most part, like I just kind of understand, like I signed up for this.
Yep.
Maybe it's because in high school I was picked on a lot. I just let it roll right off. I don't think about it once somebody says it. I don't let it affect my work. I just keep my head down. I just, keep working for the people of Hudson. But yeah, there are some people who really dislike me. And so, I never want to bring that drama home to my kids or to my family, which is why on occasion I've posted pictures of my kids, but in general, I try not to.
Yeah.
And not that there's anything wrong with people who do, elected officials who do. It's just my personal choice.
Yeah.
And
I think that's a wise decision in the long term. You'll probably, because you'll always have those photos personally, right?
I put them on my personal accounts.
Right. Yeah. I was gonna say it's not
my
like
council accounts.
Because that's one of my problems. I don't take enough pictures. So I'll go, oh, I had this really cool like time with friends, and it's like I have no photos from it, right? But so I don't post anything. It's like because I don't even have anything to post sometimes, right? But at least having something like that. But yeah, that's probably a smart. I've always said like I don't know, like that's Jonathan Haidt was saying he was like 16 is when the kids are okay to get, and I'm like that's probably what I'm gonna. But I don't have a kid yet, so it's like as soon as you have a kid, I'm sure that everything changes like that. So who knows what I'll
my first priority is just to make my girls proud.
Yep.
To do work and set an example that makes them proud. So but in the process I don't want to ever drag them into the crossfire, and I don't want it to ever affect them. So that's kind of like how I think about social media. But yeah.
Now, are there people that you run into that do dislike you but still engage?
Oh,
that
absolutely.
will still like have civil conversations with you. Okay, that's
absolutely.
Good. That's
I mean,
good.
I know people I maybe am like friendly or friends with, who've said, "Hey, I'm friends. I'm close with your opponent. In 2020, I didn't vote for you in 2020. I don't care."
Right.
And there are some people who. I also think that there's a difference between maybe the people on social media who are just being overtly mean, and then some people who have a different viewpoint, and it's more about accountability, right?
Sure.
I appreciate that open feedback. I can take criticism just fine. So, like, I've had people who are very critical of me on social media, And to some degree, I enjoy that because I think it's an opportunity to reflect upon the choices that you've made and learn more about your residents, because if they feel that way, I know others do too. And I don't want to just be in this echo chamber of people just like cheering for me.
Yeah.
And so, people who are critical of me, I think that's different than malice.
Yeah,
where
than people that are
attacking
just
you,
yeah.
and they're just being malicious.
Why do you think people? I've always wondered why people do that. Like, what do you get out of? What do you get out of just like being mean like that? I just don't. It's not really something that I've ever like had a predilection for. I guess like I've never really felt like, oh, let me just go trash somebody.
I don't
Why do people do it? It's so strange.
Same, it's the same sort of thing. Like, I think back to high school and being bullied. I mean, I don't know.
If we just made bullying popular in a different format, why have we done? It's like it feels like what it is.
Yeah, I mean, but that's what my point was in saying I think social media has contributed so much to this, really polarizing rhetoric where people on opposite sides can't talk to each other anymore.
Yeah.
And I think the internet and social media has become a big problem because you have these people who, I guess, have more practice and are more comfortable now, not only because they've seen the example of our leader who, would say hateful things and it's become more commonplace and more acceptable, but I think also just it's increased. And so, like, the more you do something, the more comfortable you are with it. Maybe people are just more comfortable.
Yeah, that's probably what it does seem like. That's what it is. Like you said, it's like I don't think that 10 years ago half of this stuff that we're hearing would have been said.
Yeah, but one thing I want to talk about before, just to make sure we get it, is how important it is for young people to run.
Yeah, let's get into that.
Yes. So I am in my early 30s. And, you see young people, they're living their lives. But, you see these people who maybe lived through tragedy and then they have a voice and they start to fight for a cause. And I think in this era of, school shootings, it's absolutely horrible.
Yeah.
We've seen a lot of young people begin to run for office because of gun violence or because they don't see representation that looks like them. And I think that's so important. And these young people really can be the change they want to see. We're never going to have things like common sense gun reform if we don't have people actually running for office who are going to prioritize that. And who's going to prioritize that more than an entire generation who lived through 12 grades of lockdown drills?
Yeah, no, truly. I mean, that's a good point. Like, you do need. I mean, there's a guy that was in my brother's class in grade school that's now a local official in. I think he's technically in Lower Burl, like right next to New Ken. I think technically Lower Burl. And then we used to have a friend of the show who was up in Cootstown, PA. He's also running for like local office.
That's awesome.
So I have a couple of friends, and he's been on the show. We're gonna meet up with him again at some point. Shout out to Alex Darlington. He's going like third party though. It's cool. He's like starting his own. He's kind of doing it like his own way. He's an interesting guy.
That's cool. Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I think this applies to anyone from any party. If you see a need in your community and you're like, I could be doing that better than that person, or but it doesn't matter what it is. I think people, they need to be the change they want to see. And it's tough to put yourself out there, to open yourself up to criticism.
Yeah.
A lot of people are intimidated also by the money, like raising money to run for office. It's expensive.
And that's one thing people don't think about. Like, to run a campaign is not cheap. Yeah. Even at the local level, it's not cheap.
No. And I think that something that really holds people back is what we've seen historically is that a lot of the people who win and represent us are in elected office are wealthy. And that's because of how expensive campaigns have become. And That I don't think is right, because then
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't really truly represent the electorate.
No.
Not everyone is wealthy. And so like when I ran, I knew I am not, a wealthy person.
Mm-hmm.
We're fine, we're comfortable, but it's not like I could put a whole bunch of money into my campaign.
No, it's like some people have this like war chest of money. They're just like ready to throw it at whoever they got.
And so for people who aren't inherently wealthy and don't come from money or whatever it is, I think that is a huge barrier, because fundraising is difficult. Asking people for money is difficult. And so that's, in my opinion, a barrier for normal people when considering whether or not they want to run. Luckily, I'd volunteered for so many campaigns before that I was very comfortable asking people for money. I don't enjoy doing it. It's super awkward to ask people for money, but that's I think a barrier. But we really need young people to do that, because if we continue to let a generation make decisions for us that we don't agree with, and none of us are stepping up to make different decisions and prioritize things that this generation actually wants, we're never going to see it happen. But I know running for office isn't for everyone, so I just encourage people to support their local officials as much as they can.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know if I would ever run for a local office. I might. That might be a thing like later on in life, but for right now, I'm doing the depolarization stuff for right now. That's kind of like where my focus is. But it still gives me I still meet a bunch of people. I get to talk to them. It's like, it's a little bit different, but there's still something very rewarding about just like being able to help people.
Yeah, I think that there's a couple of things young people can do. The first is consider, do I have what it takes, or do I want to have a desire to run for office? If the answer is no, figure out who your local city council member is, or who the person is that's running for state legislature in your area is, and support them. Volunteer for their campaign. Go knock on doors. Make calls. Donate a little bit of money. And do what you can. But also something that is really important that I don't see a lot of people, young or old, doing is really doing research on their ballot. And then they skip a lot of the offices and they just simply don't vote for offices that are down ballot. And some of those offices are incredibly important, especially the judicial races where, like locally, these judicial these judge seats are really important, and you don't see people doing a lot of research on that. And so I just want to encourage people to do their research down ballot.
Yeah, that's the one we've got this. I think like a lot of the incentives are like misaligned, but it seems like we've gotten this thing in our heads that like federal or national politics is the most important, when it actually seems like national politics certainly is important, but it's like those local things are going to affect your day to day so much more than whatever. Especially because I've always thought about this, like we have Florida and Oregon in the same country, and they're both voting on a president in very different ways. But in reality, those local offices are way more important, because those could not be, aside from the fact that they're very physically far away, you couldn't be like culturally more far away from each other with those two states. It's like, so the local seems like it's much more important in a lot of ways.
But it's funny because I've talked to a lot of people who admit like, oh, I didn't vote at all on that office because I wasn't sure. And I find that a lot of people, especially when it comes to like the judge races, that's where people like don't really want to do their research. So they go in and they vote, top of the ticket only. And I just want people to vote the entire ballot.
Yeah, that's a tough. That is a thing. A lot of people, What do you think about people that are really apolitical that would say that I don't vote?
I think that's a really privileged thing to say.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And I don't know that I disagree with that personally. I can understand why they would feel that way. There's probably any number of different reasons they feel that way. But it really truly is a privileged thing to basically say, I am the type of person who know politics is never going to seriously impact me.
Sure.
I don't need to be concerned.
And
because if nothing else, obviously I'm white. If I am not speaking up for and working to make change for people who don't have it as good as I do, then what am I really contributing to this world? So
sure.
to sit there and say I don't vote and I don't follow politics and I don't care about X, Y, or Z thing, you're really taking the stance that your life isn't going to be affected too much by it, but other people will. Other people could have rights taken away. Other people are still working towards rights that you might take for granted. And, everybody is living their life in their own way, fighting battles we don't know about and we can't see. And I'm not coming, saying this from a place of judgment. That's just my opinion is when somebody's apolitical, I think that's something that they maybe don't realize how important it is to others. And how important their one vote could be if they would cast it.
Yeah. And what about the people that say that this is, because I do have friends. I mean, I do have friends at school that say this. They it's not many, but I do know people that say that, well, this is sort of me protesting the system, right? Not engaging to sort of show my discontentment. And I've never thought how to feel about that, because I do sort of get where they're coming from, because I do think a lot of people feel disenfranchised, but it is possible that that the solution to that is probably more engagement, not less.
Absolutely. Have you ever heard the analogy, if you have to get somewhere, you take the bus that's going to get you closest there. You why would you not vote if you know that you're never going to maybe get exactly what you want, right? But maybe you can get part of the way there, or maybe you can make things a little bit better by voting. And I know that a lot of people maybe feel like, does my one vote really matter? I can tell you locally, yes. There have been races or ballot issues, levies that have passed by 100 votes, in certain communities. And so your one vote absolutely could make a difference, because if there's 100 other people in your community who feel the same way as you do, and you don't vote, but then later you were like, oh, I'm disappointed that school levy didn't pass. Well, you could have voted. And so it's funny, because a lot of times I'll hear people will complain about something, whether that's the roads, I wish my road were to be repaved. And then it comes out that they didn't vote. And it was in protest, like you were saying, I just hate the system. I don't want any part in it, so I'm not going to vote. But then they simultaneously complain about the roads. Well, you could have voted for a city council member who would have prioritized your roads.
Right. And I do wonder if if there's a group, I'm sure there are people out there that perhaps do vote locally, but might not necessarily go out to vote. Because that is a good point. It's people are does my one vote matter? And it's well, in your local community of 10,000 people, yes. It has much more weight than at the national level with 150 million people voting, or whatever it was. Yeah, I've always have said that, more local stuff. We'd all be better off if more just we have sort of lost a sense of community. In a lot of ways across the country. Trying to build that back is tough, but I think it can be done.
Yeah, but I agree with what you said. I think more engagement, and trying to actually impact change versus not engaging out of protest. I maybe in some ways that is effective, but I don't see it impacting change the way I do the people who really go out and
you don't really ever hear someone say, well, nobody voted, so we're going to switch, and it doesn't really usually happen. Like, usually some number of people go out there to vote, and then that makes it kind of tough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. What time did we start recording this? Because it's almost 2 o'clock now.
We at the studio, I think from 12:30. I think we started recording like 12:45.
12:45. Okay, well then that's in that case. That's I was for a second. I was like, did we just do like 2.5 hours without even realizing that we did? Okay, well, so,
I can talk.
So can I. Yeah,
I know. I've listened to your
yeah,
podcast.
I've done it. Okay, this is the thing. I this is a question I do like to ask people that what did you learn about like what I sort of briefly mentioned this, like what changed when you became a mother, and like what did you learn about yourself and about life and other people from going through that experience?
So I think one of the things that I learned is, and I hate to use this word again, but being a mother, the one thing that I have realized is how privileged or lucky, blessed, I hate that word blessed, but truly, we have family locally. Both of our parents help us. It is such a blessing to have help.
Yeah.
Because what I've realized is that so many women don't.
Yeah.
Not just women, parents. So
Sure.
many parents don't have the support and the help. And I remember when I was pregnant with my first daughter, Ella, whose birthday is today. Happy birthday, Ella.
Happy birthday, Ella. Is it, like I said earlier, it was just a copy paste.
Yes.
You have mini-me's.
Yeah.
You do. Yeah.
So when I was pregnant with both of them, really, but like the first time I realized this was when I was pregnant with Ella. I was really, really sick my entire pregnancy. Like I lost weight. Most pregnant people gain weight when they're pregnant. I lost weight. And I was really sick for a really long time. And it was very difficult to work. And I remember thinking to myself, how would a person who's pregnant, let's say they were a single mother or like a single parent, they didn't have a spouse or a significant other to give them the support that my husband was giving me. What would they do? How would they go to work?
Yeah.
And then if they're a single parent and, and they can't afford childcare, how do they work?
Yeah.
And I started to have all these questions where I realized that, it was really difficult for me to ever understand maybe some of these things that people struggle with and talk about, universal parental leave, affordable child care. You don't realize how important it is, not only just to these people, but also to the economy until you really experience it. But also, becoming a parent has just reminded me of how much I have in life. And that's probably different than what a lot of people say, but it's just left me with so much more compassion for and understanding of the difficulties that parents go through. And it also really made me appreciate my parents so much. And so that's what I've realized. And it's funny because I feel like for me, again, that comes back to politics, right? Like, so what are these things that we can do to help people? I read an article recently about how the birth rate has dropped.
Yep.
And a lot of people are talking about how that's going to impact our economy. They're estimating that people are going to have to work later into life. They're not going to be able to retire as early as they are.
And that's also probably as life expectancy increases as well.
Right.
That's also a thing.
Yeah. So the birth rate's dropping. And, as you look at our nation and people are talking about all these things, it's so funny, but being a parent for me, it's just reinforced to me how important it is to be involved in politics.
Yeah.
And how important it is for you to write letters to your senator, your congressperson, and advocate for the policies that you want. Do you want universal health care? Do you want affordable child care? Do you want paid parental leave? yes, 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 as a parent.
Yeah.
I want all those things. You know, if I don't make my voice heard, if I don't actually go out and advocate for it, maybe it's not going to happen.
Yeah, it might never happen. Yeah.
So that's what I think being a parent has taught me. And of course, you know, I'm just inherently a political person, so it kind of always circles back.
Yeah,
But
that's an interesting way to look at it. Yeah, but it's true. It's like all of a sudden you have two human beings. It's like that becomes your whole world. And then you start thinking about like, how do you make the world better for
place
them? Yeah.
well, I mean, look at also the environment. I mean, I feel like I remember a time when winter actually started in November. We don't even sometimes have a snowfall until well into December here in Ohio.
I don't even think we had a snowfall. We actually had a bit of a winter this year. The last couple of years we haven't, but you're right. It's like it's.
I feel like the seasons are shifting. We're seeing, you know, an increase in severe weather events, and sometimes I wonder to myself, what is this earth that we're leaving our children?
Yeah.
And so, you know, that's another thing that I realize is like as I've become a mom, I've realized how much more important it really is to me to continue to be involved. And it's funny because when I was in high school or even college, if you would have told me that I was going to run for office someday, I would have laughed in your face.
Yeah.
I would have never. I remember I took AP government, and that was kind of like the moment at which I was starting to be like, I've had enough of politics in my life. And that was, you know, when I was right before college, I was about to start to like shut it all out and turn off the news, that era of my life. And but if you would have told me back then in that AP class that I was going to run for office someday, I would have said no way.
And win.
And win. 2 times.
Right. Two times. Yeah.
So,
well, AP government will do that to you. It'll make you be like, well, forget about the whole thing now. Get me out of here.
Yes. I often think about that teacher. Her name was Mrs. Mitchell, and I really liked her. I don't think she would remember me, but I wonder if she would be surprised to know that I ran for office.
Perhaps. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay. I have a couple of concluding questions here that I like to ask every guest. So you might be reiterating some stuff, but this is just an opportunity to mention anything you haven't mentioned before. What is your favorite part of your job? And any of the things that I guess you have a variety of jobs, sort of, right? What's your favorite part of?
So my favorite job is being a mom, but my favorite part of my day job that I get paid money to do.
Yes.
I am a graphic designer by trade. That's what I went to undergrad for. I worked into the position of creative director, but for a while there I owned my own business, doing just general marketing and general communications, doing a little bit of everything, you know, from PR to digital marketing. And the thing that I like the most about my job is actually using my talents to benefit local candidates.
Yep.
Using my skills because...
Did you make your website? Did you design all of that?
I mean, I use like a Squarespace template, but yeah,
Gotcha.
I mean...
But like some of the little graphics on there. Awesome.
Yeah, so I like to use my skills in a unpaid or volunteer capacity. You know, obviously because I'm a professional, I'll give them like a receipt and say, hey, I did X number of hours of work for you designing your yard sign or your walk piece or whatever, you know, that they knock on doors with. So I like to use my professional experience and expertise to help people run for office. That's what I do as a hobby.
Yeah, that's.
I do more work, but for free or really discount.
Yeah. What do you do in your spare time? I work.
I do more work.
I do more work.
Yeah. So,
yeah,
that's what I like the most about my job is being able to use it, and not just candidates. I do some stuff for nonprofits and stuff,
that's cool.
In things that align with my values or that I'm passionate about. So.
And this is maybe another bit of repeat stuff, but what advice do you have for young people?
For young people?
Yes, aside from obviously running for office and getting, is there anything else maybe any other things you have to offer?
I have all kinds of advice. Some of it is not relevant to this. Like if I had to give myself advice looking back, it would be that a lot of times when something happens to you in life, so like we were talking before this podcast, I was laid off from my full-time job in November. And I have an LLC, so I was easy to pick up and basically start working again full-time for myself as I wait for the right opportunity. But, you know, in life, you're going to have something happen that will be devastating. And probably, for most people, something more devastating even than being laid off. But I think most people might even be laid off once in their life.
Yeah.
So if I had to give myself or young people advice, it would just be, you know, Sound of Music reference here. When one door closes, hopefully a window opens. And hopefully, you know, you may not understand why that happened, that devastating thing like losing your job or losing a loved one. But, you know, however many years or months later, a year from now, 5 years from now, you're going to look back and you're going to realize that it led you to where you are in that moment. And maybe it will never be viewed as a positive thing, but you will realize how it shaped you as a person. So just get through it. You know, you are loved. There is a reason you're here, and don't get discouraged when terrible things happen to you.
Yeah.
That's what I would have to say.
Well, that's important to think about that, because sometimes it's easy to, and this is actually an interesting thing. I there was an interview with Stephen Colbert and Anderson Cooper, and they were talking about how they'd both sort of gone through the same experience of losing parents and siblings at a very young age. And Anderson Cooper was like, one thing my mom always taught me was like, you know, you always want to ask, oh, why me? Like, why did this happen? But the real thing is like, why not me? Like, why would I be exempt from just these sort of this unfortunate aspect that like life, like that stuff's going to happen. Like tragedy is going to strike. There's not really a way to avoid it. And it's just, I think it's important like to understand that you can, that can be, you can grow from that. You can learn something, something you can get. Yeah.
Sometimes you just need to get through that, like today, though. You know.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just need to get through today, and go easy on yourself, and that's all you can do. And
Yeah.
That's all right,
I gotta do more of that. I have. Wait, why am I blanking on my very last one, or last two of them? No, I think that's everything. That was all my questions and everything. Is there anything else that you would like to say, or anything you want to plug, anything you want to let people know about going on? Nothing.
No, just if you want to run for office, do it. You know, you may ask yourself, what qualifies me? And you don't need anything to qualify you. You just need to have a desire to be the change you want to see. I remember when I first was like, should I really be running? Like, I'm in marketing.
Take the job that you're not qualified for, and then figure out how to get the qualifications.
Fake it till you make it.
Yes.
But running for office, though, if you think about it, not everyone is a lawyer or, you know, a business mogul or whatever.
No.
Like, there's regular people.
Yeah.
There's people in marketing who need representation, and you know, every person brings something different. And so, if you're sitting there asking yourself, well, can I really run? Am I qualified? Yes, you're qualified. You don't need a degree. You know, you don't need any particular job. You can work in marketing, and you can run. So, run for office.
All right. Well, thank you very much for sitting down with me today. It's great to see you. It's great to be here.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to see everybody at the party and everything. It's going to be fun. And yeah, just thank you again for everything.
Yeah, thank you.
Of course. Bye, everybody. We'll see you later. I don't know when.